Hello and welcome back to Will's World, where we don't just have one obsession, we have 100. And today's obsession is going to be discussing something slightly different, something that I've kind of recently got back into. It's a program that I watched as a kid, and I've kind of rewatched it in the last few weeks from an adult kind of perspective, and that program is Tugs. Now, if you don't know what Tugs was it was a TV show created in the late 80s that is kind of a sister show to Thomas the Tank, the original series that were kind of narrated by Ringo Starr. So if you're kind of like a 90s kid, you were probably aware of Thomas, at least, if not actually into it. So yeah, it's really strange actually how I kind of came to find out about the show, because it aired and was created before I was born, and the only reason I kind of knew of its existence was that somebody, it might have been my parents, it might have been someone else, had obviously seen, from the creators of Thomas, and I was a big Thomas fan at the time, and bought the VHS, and it was the VHS that contained the episodes Trapped, Ghosts and High Winds, I believe. And it was really cool to have, because I remember specifically, and this is how nostalgia works, is how we kind of become obsessed with things in our adulthood. Is I just have this really strong memory of being unwell, being off school, and just watching this Tugs VHS, and it's kind of stuck with me. And there's been, over the years, there's been a few times where if I've been just like randomly wanting something to watch, I would probably put one of those 3 episodes on, most likely those ones, because they were the ones that I'd seen, but I hadn't kind of properly watched all the episodes, or I knew a little bit about the history, that it didn't run for very long. It was kind of shrouded with errors and bankruptcy in the end, which is what ultimately caused it to only have the one series. And yeah, so it was only recently, I think, I don't even know how I kind of came across this new obsession. I think I just watched the episodes recently, and were like one of the episodes, and was just like, oh yeah, I need to finally watch all of these and finally get an understanding of it. And then I kind of went on YouTube to find videos by people like The Unlucky Tug, to find out a little bit more history about the show and about some of the theories, and watch the Iceberg one as well, which is pretty good. And yeah, so it kind of became a little bit of a obsession. I don't actually have any Tugs merchandise as of yet. Hopefully going to rectify that soon, and I'll show you guys. But I thought today in this video, after giving you a little brief history lesson, I'll probably, if people want it, if people want to see it, I'll probably do more videos explaining kind of my theories on Tugs and things like that. So let me know in the comments if that's something you want. But I thought today we'd just start off nice and easy with top 3 episodes, and just kind of give a little bit of detail. So if you don't want spoilers, please go watch these episodes. They're only 15-20 minutes depending on the edit, the cut of the episode. So please watch those first if you're interested, and then we'll go through these top 3 episodes. So at number 3, I think I'm going to put the only episode in this list that isn't one that I watched as a kid, which is Munitions. And this obviously has a 15-minute and a 20-minute cut. They're both on YouTube. I would advise go watch the 20-minute cut, because it's just better in terms of context and characters acting how you would expect them to act, than the 15-minute cut, which does seem like it kind of missing a lot. But yeah, this episode I think stood out, and I had to put it in my top 3 because it was entertaining. It was like thrilling in its own way, for a kids show. It was actually quite thrilling to find out what was going to happen. The special effects alone warrant it being in this list. Not special effects, but like how they orchestrated the explosions and everything like that. It felt real. Do you know what I mean? Like, it felt almost like full size, as if we were filming real boats here and not models. And yeah, I couldn't take my eyes off it really. And similar to all the guys when they were watching the explosion, it was like mesmerizing, and I think that's what they were going for, and I think it was executed really well. I think in this episode in particular, you obviously saw a little bit of a dig at, like, you know, autocrats, bureaucrats, whatever it might be, pedantic people, you know, with blue nose representing that kind of officious, unwavering kind of, oh yeah, we'll do it this way, I have to do it this way, I have to do it this way, all that kind of stuff, and just being very, very uptight and, you know, not very nice really. And so, like, that's why it's probably almost in the villain category of the show. But I thought it was executed well, and, you know, there's that scene which kind of gets played a lot, which is, you know, him being towed away after the explosions, where he's got, like, going like this, and he's got, like, PTSD from what the looks of it, because, you know, ultimately it was his fault. Well, it was contributory, but he played the biggest part. And, you know, other characters that had roles in this, I think it was a good episode to illustrate all of their kind of characteristics. So that's why I'm putting that at number 3. Number 2 is gonna be, it's hard between these two, but I think just on how many times I've watched the episodes alone, I think number 2 is going to be Ghosts. So obviously this was on the VHS that I had, and, you know, I can't remember how old I would have been when I watched the VHS for the first time, or when I was still watching it, but, you know, as an episode for, like, kids, this is, you know, pretty scary in it for its time, for a kids show. Obviously not comparable to the way things are now, but I think there was just something, again, mesmerising about it. I think this is a good way to describe Tugs, because for everything that it is, and everyone who loves it, and everyone who, you know, admires it, and all the rest of it, stuff like it, it's still very much a cult kind of TV show, and inspired, like, a cult audience as well, like lots of, like, people who are kind of passionate about it. But I think that one of the reasons for that is it is such a mesmerising show, not just visually, but, you know, the characters, everything about it, the script, you know, everything kind of works in a way, and which is sad really that we didn't ever get the half-an-hour cuts of all these episodes, because that would be amazing to see. And then obviously it was cut down to 20 and then cut down to 15, but yeah, Ghosts, it had a very eerie kind of theme to it. Obviously it was all about Big Mac originally seeing this this ghost fleet, and, you know, I think it's a very interesting premise, because obviously, you know, in terms of, like, ghost ships, it's quite a prevalent thing for sailors, for people who work on the ocean and things like this, that, you know, it's a little bit superstitious, of course it is, but it still remains to this day, and there's, you know, lots and lots of videos and documentaries on ghost ships and quite a few other bits and bobs, but, you know, especially for kids, it was like an introduction to that kind of idea. Again, with this one, it kind of feels like, obviously this has got a heavy nostalgia link to it, but all the scenes were fantastic, and obviously one of the funniest scenes is obviously when Top Hat rests in this, what he thinks is far away from the docks, but it actually isn't that far, and Grampus kind of comes up out of the water like he does, squirts the water in Top Hat's face, and it's just hilarious, you know. And then all the other characters being kind of laughing at Big Mac at first, which, you know, was crazy really, because, like, Big Mac of all the characters was the more stoic kind of hard man almost of the Tugs, and so for him to be the one that was kind of scared of ghosts at first, and everyone else saw the fleet, and it just became this big thing, and everyone was kind of almost convinced that it was real. And you've got the big scene obviously when 10 Cents and Sunshine obviously see the ship raising out of the ocean, and they see Poseidon's face, and, you know, I think it was quite memorable is 10 Cents' face in this, the face plate they put on him, where he was just like, ah, completely eyes shut and just got mouth open and just being like, no, I'm not watching this. And I think a lot of kids probably were doing the same thing when they were watching it, if they were watching it as a young kid. But even so, even if I was a little bit scared of it, maybe as a kid, I'm like, you know, despite watching it loads, I don't know, it never felt like too far. I think that's important. Maybe that's just me. Maybe there were other kids who probably were like, no, I'm not watching this. They watched episode 1 and then got to episode 2 and were kind of like, no, we're not letting our kids watch this. But nonetheless, great episode. Might not rank up there with a lot of people's, but for me, obviously having that nostalgia hit, being quite a fan of ghost ships and all these theories and all this kind of stuff that goes with it, or that kind of eerie sense of wonder about all these vessels that have perished over the years. And so it kind of tapped into that, and maybe that's one of the causes of it. Maybe that kind of piqued my interest in later life. So maybe I've got a lot to owe this, as I think I do, to Tugs. You know, my love of ships and things like that. I think Tugs played a big part in that as a kid. You know, as much as I must have liked Thomas as a kid, I have to say I haven't kind of maintained any interest in trains and things like that. But ships, you know, that's something that has kind of stayed with me now until this day, really. So that episode definitely contributed. But the episode number one that has contributed massively to it is Trapped. Now, again, this was on the VHS. Funny story, really, is kind of like my OCD. Even stretching back to as a kid, I had this sense of I didn't want things to end. If I really liked them, I didn't want them to end. I wouldn't kind of try and instigate that. So what I would do is I would watch the first two episodes, Trapped and Ghosts, and then I'd be kind of not wanting it to end because it had been so good, and I just wouldn't watch the last episode. I used to do that on VHS tapes all the time, and I used to just kind of skip over the last episode. So I don't have a lot of nostalgia memories for High Winds. It was High Winds or High Tide, I can't remember which one. But having watched it recently as an adult, it's still a very good episode. But yeah, number one going to be Trapped, just because for me this encompasses my entire love of like modern kind of ship disasters and ship incidents and things like that. Because even though it was one of the upriver episodes, I think the characters in this were fantastic. You had obviously introducing Billy Shupak, who was just a crazy guy, with his dynamite and things like that. But obviously I think that the jeopardy comes in great in this, with the barge kind of blocking the river, and how much of an impact that has, not just on the river, but obviously then getting to the ocean, all of the other kind of aspects to it. So there's definitely a sense of jeopardy there, even though it's not as like a bigger sense of jeopardy as say munitions, where it's obviously the factory explosions. It's still a big sense of jeopardy for what it means for the business. You know, the Captain Star, Captain Zero, all their business will be affected. What it means for the Tugs, you know, danger, and stuff like that. So I like the sense of jeopardy that it brings. I think the character development in this is great. Obviously, like I mentioned, you've got Billy Shupak coming into it. You see kind of a different side to Zug in terms of, you know, almost like that he's just obviously taken on too much and bullied into doing this job in a way that he was incapable for by Zoran, and kind of like ultimately Zoran gets away and Zug is kind of left with his mortal enemies, the Star Tugs, you know. So it brings in that little dynamic. I always like it when, you know, either Zebedee or Zoran or Zug, they get involved with the Star Tugs, and it kind of twists it a little bit. So they're not kind of friends, but they kind of work together. And that's kind of what happens in this episode. But I don't know, this episode in particular just holds the most nostalgia. It's probably one I've watched the most. If I ever did fancy watching Tugs, that would be the episode I'd put on. I think there's some great moments in this episode for all the characters. I think Top Hat's brilliant in it. Zoran. Overall, I think that's going to be my favourite one. So yeah, that's my top three and a little bit of history. I hope you've enjoyed it. Comment down below if you want to see more Tugs videos. Definitely got one lined up coming soon, hopefully for some merchandise, and I'll show you guys that. But it's a great show. If anyone's not seen it, please watch it. You'll not regret it. Yeah, it's just a really good show. That's, to this day, over 25 years later, is still kind of going strong, really. We're coming up to like 30 years, I think, now. A couple of years, so yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Please like, subscribe, share the video. It really helps, and it helps me know what videos you guys want and like. And yeah, I'm happy to do requests as well, so just let me know. And I'll speak to you soon. As always, peace, love, and prayers. Bye.